Hey everyone, Curse Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks assisted, and here we are with Lara Croft Tomb Raider. This is one of our donation decks of the week that comes from Lexa, who says, as a big fan of the video games, especially the one this version is based on, I had to make a Lara Croft deck, but it doesn't 100% gel right now. Would love a second set of eyes on it, even if I already have the feeling like you're going to ask me to kill some darlings. I would never. I never advise people to take the cards that they love and replace them with more consistent cards. I mean, even as I say that tongue-in-cheek, I don't think there's so many darlings I'm going to be killing here. I think the core of this deck is rather good, and I think it's more a few directions I want to go the deck into. It's more there's a few directions I want the deck to go into, especially when it comes to closing games. So I think this is a very, very feasible deck. So thank you, Lexa, for supporting the channel and sending the deck. And yeah, let's get right into it. If you'd like to take a look at the deck list we're talking about today, or if you'd like to submit your own deck list to me so that I can make a video assisting your deck, please check the video description down below. So I never really played the Lara Croft games. I mainly grew up in like a Nintendo household, so I played Zelda, Mario, that kind of stuff. I remember Lara Croft mainly from the very pointy polygon, character she used to be. I never saw this new one, but it did look like a pretty fun action game. I'll let you guys comment how much you love Lara Croft and if she is your favorite video game character, more than even, let's say, Sonic. When's Sonic gonna get one of those secret layers? That's coming, right? That has to be coming. So who is Lara Croft and what is she bringing into this, I'm gonna say legendary artifact / legendary land, but mainly legendary artifact deck? Lara Croft Tomb Raider is green, blue, red, 3 mana. That is Temur colors. She's a legendary human ranger, 3/4, first strike reach. She has 2 abilities. The first one is whenever she attacks, exile up to 1 target legendary artifact card or legendary land card from a graveyard and put a discovery counter on it. You may play a card from exile with a discovery counter on it this turn. So that one's specific. Each time she attacks, you're going to add to the discovery pile, but you don't have to use or cast any of your discovery cards, and you don't have to cast the one you discovered, I'm going to say quote unquote, even though that's a mechanic. So you don't have to add the one you put into the discovery card that turn. You can use another discovery card like that you may have discovered. My god, this mechanic's really throwing me off. If you put a card in the pile, you can use a different card with Lara Croft's ability that turn. So it lets you kind of create a bank of cards to pull out of, but it's still specific that we need her to attack and we need them into our graveyard. We need the cards in our graveyard. The second ability is Raid. At the end of combat on your turn, if you attack this turn, create a treasure token, which I think is a very strong ability. Especially, you don't need to feel like you have to ramp into her in turn 2, because if you go turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, you can attack with your turn 1 or turn 2 play and get a treasure card going into your 4th turn, which I think is pretty good. I think I've looked around at builds of Lara Croft, and I really do feel like a lot of people are playing her either very specifically in this first ability zone, where you're trying to use the legendary artifact cards or legendary land cards, which this deck finds itself in, or people are playing her as a kind of value treasure commander, where the main plan is to use her raid ability in junction of other powerful cards to make her into just a treasure producer primarily, with that first ability as a secondary kind of thing. And I do really like this a lot more. I do appreciate that we are leaning into the legendary artifacts, and as I said, on the whole, I do really like this deck. Right off the top, we have 38 lands, and we have a really nice curve. You've caught my attention, I do like it. We do have a lot of 3-drops, but knowing that some of these we are planning to mill into our graveyard, even though we do need to cast them fairly, I'm not too hard on. I think maybe what we could do is immediately put a few more mana dorks. They're not in my additions, but if you added 1 or 2 more 1-mana creatures, I think the deck would curve out a lot nicer, especially in terms of the number of 3-mana cards that we have. Beyond that, the thing I really want to bring attention to that I really like is most of the deck, but the sorceries and instants, I find them to be very, very good. Hugh the Entwood is really, really cool here. Eagle Vision is fantastic here. The whole sorcery instant section is fantastic. And artifacts, mainly up to 3-ish mana, I like all of them, and a little past them, I kind of fall a little out of love with them. Not all of them, obviously things like Ariet's Tempting Apple and the One Ring are very, very strong here. The Great Henge, I think, is also very strong and is most likely not going to be a 9-mana card. Whereas something like the Chromatic Orrery really doesn't catch my eye, and I think it's pretty bad. And even something like the Immortal Sun, especially since we have a Planeswalker, which we'll get back to, feels like not really where we want to be. It's just on my mind that these cards, we still have to cast them fairly most of the time, and that's not really what I want to be doing. Looking at the creatures, once again, a lot of them I do like. There's a bunch of them that are legendary artifacts, which I really like. I think that's cute and nice. Some of them are legendary artifacts, but aren't really interesting. Hope of Ghirapur, sorry, taking my bracelets off as they jingle jangle. Hope of Ghirapur feels particularly weak here. I get that it's a legendary artifact, and I get the recursion of it is a particularly strong thing to do, but the fact is that you have to pick one opponent each time, and it's only this turn, as in the turn you sacrifice the Hope of Ghirapur, makes it kind of really clunky to use and kind of tricky, right? No, until your next turn. Sorry, I got it backwards. You can use this to lock one opponent out of all their sorcery spells that are non-creature if you repeatedly bring this back each turn. But I don't know how much I like that, because like I said, it's clunky because you got to pick one opponent. They still get to use instant spells, which they will bank up to deal with the problem of the Hope of Ghirapur on your turn, because that's when the protection or the taxation stops. But also your other opponents are very much so incentivized to not allow this to continue for too long. Like, you can make some deals, but at a certain point, they recognize that once that first opponent is out, they're going to be targeted with Hope of Ghirapur. And if they are, if they're a creature deck, they might not care, but a lot of other decks might find this to be a worrying thing and might work together to take you out. I don't know, that's going to be kind of a play pattern / group mentality. You'll know what's best, but Hope of Ghirapur does feel like a lot of the times it's just going to be a weaker card, so I leave that one up to you. Also, don't you need haste? Or don't you? No, because you attack, you sack it. How does this work? Sorry, I need to do this one more time. So, her is an attack trigger. Oh yeah, this isn't going to work as well as even I think it, because, so, Hope of Ghirapur needs to hit. So that means that you have to skip every other Lara Croft trigger, because Lara Croft's trigger is when she attacks. So it means she attacks and Hope of Ghirapur attacks. Both of them are attacking. I'm going to use my hands for references. And then Lara Croft can't pull Hope because it's on the battlefield. Hope will hit your opponent, enabling the trigger. You'll go to your next phase, you'll sacrifice Hope, and then it's too late to bring it back. So you'll have to go a turn cycle. Lara Croft will have to attack again. Then you can put Hope of Ghirapur in exile. Then you can cast it again. See, you're doing it every second turn, and that's absolutely not good enough. So, all right. This complicated interaction is solved. Hope of Ghirapur is bad. I would like to take it out. Otherwise, there's a lot of these higher mana cards here. And something I want to talk about is that I want the deck to have better finishers. There's a few finishers here, notably I think the Simulacrum Synthesizer is probably the best one. And I do recognize I'm suggesting to take out some of the higher mana cards, but with the way that Lara Croft works, you can kind of cycle the same legendary artifacts. Something like, Ariet's Tempting Apple can be cycled every turn cycle to a great effect, and something like Synthesizer allowing you to get an extra construct every time is going to be really, really impressive. So I can see that being a win condition, but a lot of our higher mana cards are really clunky win conditions. Like Mary, Reed, and Anne Bonny, though we just did a deck on them, this is not the deck that I want to see this card in. There is not enough pirates, there are not enough vehicles, and there are not enough islands. I just don't want this here. Likewise, things like Rose and Blaster and Karn are all cool value like engines that can very much so like take over the game over time, but are just massive investments because of that. And all of these legendary artifacts still need to be cast fairly, so the higher mana ones are really catching my eye, something I don't want to do. The Triad especially, I feel, is definitely probably the worst win condition here, because you have to kind of throw your main game plan in the garbage, because the only way you can go ahead and do this second ability to basically be a win condition with an emblem, and I think this is one of the few non-planeswalkers that creates an emblem. That's really cool. But you can use this ability, and what does it do is it removes your graveyard so Lara Croft doesn't do anything. Likewise, Lara Croft cares about quality of cards in your graveyard, whereas this cares about quantity. So this card feels like a particular nombo. Finally, Koira. I like Koira, but this is the worst version of her. There's practically nothing that's good about this card. Honestly, I have a really hard time with it. I remember I got this as a dual dex to help someone learn Magic, and I kept, excuse me, I kept looking at this Planeswalker, and I kept feeling like I was missing something. Oh no, this is not her. Oh, I'm sorry. This is not the first version. This is still bad though. I confused this with the first version of Koira. This is not the first version, but it's still particularly bad. Why aren't we playing that Tamiyo? Like, if we want to be milling, why aren't we playing Tamiyo Collector of Tales? Because this has a really good static, and you can start milling 4 as a plus every time, naming a card you might want to hopefully get into. And she starts at 5 toughness. I think loyalty. I think this is a lot better. This -3 is a lot better. If you do want to play a Planeswalker and you're going to cut the Immortal Sun, definitely cut Kiora and definitely play this Tamiyo, which I think is much, much better. Looking, is there anything I want to talk about specifically that I haven't touched on? That's generally it. A lot of the higher mana cards are where I see some pressure points. Yeah, let's just go straight into additions. Alright, so the name of the game for the first few cards is Finishers. Urza, Lord High Artificer, is a card that used to be way more expensive. I can't believe it's gone down so much, but I really do like this just as a very good support card in the deck, where you can slam Urza, make a very, very valuable construct, and then turn all of your extra artifacts that you have laying around into Mox Ambers, or better yet, Mox Opals, which I think is really, really good and allows you to make more of, you know, the plan you have where there's artifacts that you want to keep casting. Because once again, the main problem with this deck is that though you get to recast artifacts, you're still paying full price for them. So having a way to make extra mana is really nice. Of course, Urza is like a 1-card win condition at times if you can, you know, use that 5 mana ability repeatedly. But here, I think it's just a really great value creature that you can throw in. It works with the historic cards, and I think you're pretty happy with it. Something I'm way more interested in, I wanted to put the boring one first. Brutaclad is very, very cool. And I think this is definitely the card that I would say, take this card and maybe build around it. This is my kill all your darlings, but this darling. This is my darling. Brutaclad is really, really interesting in this deck. Not only is it not only is it a legendary artifact, so we already can recur it with our commander, but the mechanic of turning other tokens into the token of your choice not only works with these construct tokens, which I think is one of the strongest win conditions your deck can make with Urza and not Solemn Simulacrum, but Simulacrum Synthesizer. But in addition, it works with the treasure tokens that your commander naturally generates. So as you play the game and as you're doing what your deck wants to do, you're basically already setting up for a very, very lethal Brutaclad turn, which I think is really, really cool. And I think for that reason, this is the win condition I want you to mainly go for, with kind of like the construct stuff being like, I guess like your main kind of mid-range plan outside of the value plays and outside of what I would say beatdowns with your commander. So Brutoclad really catches my eye, and I think that should be a big addition. Another legendary artifact that really caught my eye is the Peregrine Dynamo. This is a 20-cent card, which really caught my eye. But also it is everything you want it to be. Legendary artifact, so you can get it. It has haste, and it has this very specific ability that allows you to copy target activated or triggered ability that you control from another legendary source that's not a commander. Now, obviously your commander has activated abilities that you really do like, but due to the historic nature of your deck and the fact that a lot of the artifacts that are creatures are legendary, so they work with your commander, you can now trigger, like double trigger a lot of the things that you have, such as Brutoclad, such as Urza. There's probably a few more here. I haven't gone through all of them, but these are very, very valuable, I think, and having this so cheap and so powerful, I think you're going to be very, very happy. It also notably says other legendary sources. It doesn't say legendary creatures, so some of your legendary artifacts will benefit from this as well. Once again, a card that I think is like tailor-made for Lara Croft. Two cards I think I want in the deck as more on-brand looting. I think you already have, so you have a good collection of them in your sorceries, but Scrapwork Mutt and the next card I think fit a lot better. Scrapwork Mutt is just a really, really good utility card. I think I've noticed that like it is in our nature when we're building commander decks just to put bombs and high impact cards, that we sometimes undervalue are cards that just kind of smooth out the deck, that make it more functional. And Scrapwork Mutt is a very good smoother. It is a creature that not only does what you want to do, discard draw, so you rummage, but also it is a card that you don't mind milling over, discarding itself, because you can unearth it otherwise. It's a historic card, so it works with historic strategies. It's an artifact, so it works with a lot of things in your deck. And I think it's just very accessible as a pretty good turn 2 play. I like this a lot. I think it's a very easy addition, and perhaps on much higher level decks where we're trying to hit those fabled 7, 8, 9, Scrapwork Mutt can be cut. But at the moment, I think it is great to have here. Another one, I have two more. Another one that really caught my eye is Hazoret's Monument. Now you could play any of the monuments in your color because they're all legendary artifacts, but this is the one that catches my eye because it also rummages. When you cast a creature spell, you may discard a card if you do draw a card. This also includes the fact that that first piece of text that makes your red creatures cost 1 less. Generally, this is going to be somewhat useful, but you can also just mentally adjust this wording to say, your commander costs 1 less, which means you're basically reducing a little bit of the commander tax, because obviously the first cast of Lara Croft has no colorless mana, but I think that's basically free. These two cards and the fact that it's a legendary artifact so Lara can get it back, I think is rather good. And once again, a nice smoother card that allows you to get through more of your deck and make more informed draws, discards, and see the right cards of your deck. Now here's the one that really caught my eye and that I was a little surprised wasn't in here, is the Spear of Leonidas. So this is just good. It is not only a legendary artifact, which I really appreciate, so it works with our whole deck, but it has several really relevant abilities, with obviously Revelation being the best one for the deck, allowing you to continue to rummage through your deck and get the cards you want into the graveyard. Summon and Bull Rush are fine. Bull Rush most likely you want to do when it is not on your commander, because you're not gaining that much value. Whereas instead, if you could put this on something that has a damage trigger, you'll be much happier. Summon is just fine. I think if you really like your hand or you really need a blocker, I think this is fine. I just don't imagine seeing you use this a lot. And Revelation, once again, I think that's the main one you're going to do churn through your deck. Another thing with these cards, like this Assassin's Creed set, I was really nervous because it was modern legal, and I do not like when modern cards are coming in supplemental product like this. But don't ask me about MH3 because I love MH3. But I think I meant Universes Beyond. But regardless, they're still really pushed cards. They really want to sell these cards, and so all of them are very strong. And therefore, the fact that this is on attack is just insane. Compare this to the Swords of cycle, which is obviously generally stronger and different cards. This card doesn't even need to make contact. The second you attack, you're instantly getting value out of discarding 2 and drawing 2, or getting double strike, or getting a legendary 3/2. And that's just a really, really valuable play. So I think this is another card that's a really good smoother and gives you more onto the lane of like, just equip this to Lara Croft and start attacking. A few lands here that caught my eye. Academy Ruins, I think, is notably missing. Just to be able to buy back certain artifacts, I think is going to be very good. Likewise, Argoth, Sanctum of Nature, and with it, Titania, Voice of Gaia, are cards you could be playing. I'm not going to go too deep into them because I don't think they necessarily really work too much. They just have interesting mechanics with them that kind of work with the deck. Both cards really care about milling, which the deck likes. Argoth is for some reason not a legendary land, despite it feeling like it should be. That's what I almost didn't suggest it because I initially thought this was legendary, but it isn't. Still, I think they do make a bit of a interesting combo. I think the life gain off of all of your rummaging will be very valuable. And if you are able to, I guess I click this one. If you're able to meld them into Titania, Gaia, Incarnate, you're going to be happy. It's going to be a very, very big creature, but I don't know how often that's going to happen. I'm going to leave that to you. Unfortunately, neither card can be pulled out of the graveyard by Lara, but you have other ways of doing so, so it might not be completely wasted. I'll leave them up to you. I'm not too excited about these, but I thought it was worth noting. Finally, the last card I wanted to add is Trash for Treasure. And in here, I'm also going to suggest any other Trash for Treasure effects. I know this is like our mono red goblin commander can do that. The Planeswalker can also has Trash for Treasure. And there's a few other Trash for Treasures that are attached to like creatures or other artifacts. So this is just a stand-in for Trash for Treasure, which I think is just really accessible in your deck because, like I said, you have a lot of ways of milling your deck into your graveyard, rummaging your deck into your graveyard, and we still have to play these cards rather fairly, so I do like the idea of having just another way to pull those cards out, put them on the battlefield, cheat them into play, like the One Ring, or, you know, even Chromatic Orrery. I feel like I would be a lot easier on it if we could cheat into play reliably, and something by having a few Trash for Treasure effects really does enable that. And those are generally going to be my additions. The next step kind of is to figure out what direction this deck should go into, because it really does feel that it's in several directions all at the same time. There's some really, really strong stuff here where we have like Ragavan into Lara Croft. We also have Gaia's Cradle for some ungodly reason. And like Umaza's Jitte, which is a really powerful card, Swiftfoot Boots, but no Lightning Greaves. Like we have Strength, Mox Opal, Mox Amber. Like we have that strong side, Crop Rotation, but we also have cards like, I don't know, Anissa of Traken, we have Rose. So like we're kind of like 1 foot in this power, 1 foot in the fun category, and I think the deck needs a direction to go into. It's partially why a lot of the cards I wanted to suggest kind of give you a direction. The Trash for Treasure, which is the last thing I thought, was, you know, you could go into a more reanimation style, which is something I like, but not necessarily what you want. The Brutaclad option, which I think is the most interesting, allows you to keep some strangeness to the deck, but also have a very like fun direction to be building towards, almost like a Secret Commander deck. So once we know that, I think it's gonna be easier to work on it, because once again, like cards like Broadside Bombardiers is an insanely powerful card and is in the same deck as something like, I don't know, where is it? Jackdaw, right? Like, or Bessie, the Doctor's Roadster. Like these cards do not have the same power level, and we need to kind of figure out where exactly we're going. Where is this Roadster taking us? After that, I think obviously there's a lot of staples that are missing here, and I think they're missing on purpose. Things like Soul Ring, things like Lightning Bolt, things like maybe another counter spell. I think even counter, let's see how much blue we have here. Pretty even, I'd say. So depending, you could make this into Arcane Denial or something else, but like it's very clear that we've thought of the staples last. And having a conversation, remembering a conversation I had with Alexa recently about how, especially in removal, staples are a little uninteresting for them. I'm still going to suggest them. I always will. My mentality is this. Actually, I'll go over what they said briefly. They were talking about the idea that every deck is playing the same, let's say, 8 removal spells within its colors, and it creates a kind of stagnation in creativity because there are cards in your deck that are always there, and instead of playing those, we should play on synergy cards that are much more interesting to play, have higher ceilings, and are unique to our deck and can put us towards the direction of creativity. And though there's a lot to chew on that, and I do appreciate a lot of parts of that argument, I did want to say, generally, and this is my general advice to most Commander players, I find that almost universally, removal is underplayed rather than overplayed. So if you are a player, perhaps like at the level I am, in terms of the power level, you like in your decks, like I like higher, not CEDH, but higher power level decks, and you find yourself wanting to build a lower power deck, going from like a 7 or an 8, and you're purposely going down to a 5 or a 6, that is a great opportunity to be looking at these kind of cards. But if you are generally building decks, if you're trying to improve wins, if you're trying to, hold up a deck against stronger decks, you can't go wrong by playing the staples. You're in blue, Rapid Hybridization, Pongify. You're in red, Lightning Bolt. You're in white, Swords and Path. You're in black, Dismember. Like, they might be boring cards in a lot of ways, but I think there's a lot of value still playing them and interacting. There's something also to remember that, like, stopping your opponents from winning is a part of your game plan, right? There's very few decks at higher levels that are all in on winning outside of like CEDH, and even they bring in like cards that allow them to silence or otherwise stop their opponents from interacting with them. So almost, I would say every Commander deck needs to think about some kind of interaction. Otherwise, you're going to have an entire axis of the game that you are just not playing with your opponents. If you played a creature every turn, sure, you're running the blocking, the combat step, what a great step for you. You do so much in it. The untap step, another great step for you. You have so many things to untap, all these creatures. But when it comes to anything at instant speed, anything about interaction, generally, you're just going to be outside of the game. I know there's specific creatures that do those things. Leave me alone, Magic players. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit because I still think I want to suggest things like Lightning Bolt, Pognify, Rapid Hybridization, Nature's Claim, that kind of stuff, because it can't hurt. But for Lexa and where they want to put the deck, where they want the deck to land, I think we're going to be in a situation where we'll have to hear back from them. We'll have to hear what the final kind of direction is. Yeah. Can we play Gaia's Cradle with this few creatures? I'm going to leave that to someone to tell me. If you watched the video to this point, tell me if you can play Gaia's Cradle with this many creatures, because I'm not sure if you can. I don't own Gaia's Cradle. So I'm going to let you guys just tell me, because this feels a little suspect. Thank you so much for setting the deck, Lexa. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. It's been a pretty hot weekend where I live, and I'm kind of exhausted, so I'm going to try to get another video out this week. But otherwise, I'm still going through all the decks you guys have been sending. There's a lot to work on, and I've been really liking it. I got some new decks of my own that you'll probably see on Mudsta's channel sometime soon, so keep an eye out for that. But otherwise, good luck and happy deck building. Thank you so much for watching. This video is brought to you by viewers like you and people on my Patreon. If you'd like to send me another draft of this deck, or any deck, there is a link in the video description down below. And if you'd like to make your deck one of my donation decks I work on, there's a link there too. Finally, if you'd like to like, comment, subscribe, I would be very appreciative. It helps the channel quite a bit. Thank you and good luck in brewing and building.